So over the weekend, I took a look at the amazing power of multiple cursors and multiple selections within Sublime Text. And it got me thinking about some of the other features that I love in Sublime Text, and namely some key combinations. So for example, I could say hello world, and then if I highlight this and I hit Command K followed by Command U, you can see that that selection there was uppercase. And then if I hit Command K followed by Command L, you can see that it was lowercase. And now this got me thinking about Angular. Angular out of the box has super seamless event bindings right within the Angular template syntax. I mean, it's really, really easy to do, but you can really only do it for individual events, individual keyboard events like key down plus meta plus enter, right? I can do command enter and this would be bound. However, it doesn't really have any mechanism built in for multiple key combinations. So for example, if I wanted to do this Command K, Command U, there's no way to identify that in a template binding. So I thought, well, what if I can create a custom template binding, something like meta K followed by meta U. So essentially, tell it to have a key down event binding for the meta K or the command K followed by the meta U. Similarly, I could do one for meta K followed by meta L for the lowercase. So let's take a look at an Angular template to see what that might look like. So here is my app component. It's super simple. I just have a couple of handlers here that log the data, and you can see I'm binding to the host and I'm using my key down, the native key down binding here. But rather than having a simple binding, you can see that I have a bunch of pluses. So Command K plus Command U would be uppercase, Command K plus Command L would be lowercase, and then for funsies, I'm including the up, down, left, right space, because I don't have a start key. But this, of course, is the secret Konami code from many of our youths. So let's jump into the browser to see how this might work. So if I just refresh here, you can see that it's found some complex, chained key sequences, and you can see it's finding meta K plus meta U, meta K plus meta L, and then of course our Konami code as well. So now, if I just focus into the browser and I hit Command K, Command U, blam, there's our uppercase, Command K plus Command L, lowercase, and now let me see if I can do the Konami. Up, down, left, right space. Boom. 30 free lives, all baby. So let's take a look at now how this has been implemented in the code. So essentially, Angular has this event manager plugin system where it actually implements all of the DOM events and the keyboard events as a set of plugins. And in fact, the native key down, key up, key press, click, mouse enter, mouse leave, all that jazz, that's actually implemented using the plugin system as well. It's just that Angular has its own internal plugins that it registers, and we have an opportunity to define our own plugins as part of the provider system for our modules. So in this case, I am registering this keyboard events chained key down plugin that's going to step in and take over for events that start with key down and contain a plus. So let's take a quick look at how this plugin works. So a plugin has to essentially implement three methods: add event listener, add global event listener, and supports. Now supports is essentially how we tell Angular that this plugin is going to handle a particular event. Essentially what Angular does is every time it comes across an event binding in a template, it goes through and loops over the event manager plugins in reverse order using the first one that returns true for a .supports call. And it doesn't reverse order so that we have an opportunity to override the inbuilt plugins that Angular provides out of the box. So in this case, it's going to pass an event name, which is going to be a string like this. And we're going to say if that includes the key down event type and the plus symbol, then we're going to go ahead and take over. This is very loose check here. I'm not being very strict because this is just an exploration. So at that point, Angular will stop and it'll call either the add event listener or the add global event listener, for this case in terms of the window event. And we're going to go ahead and parse the higher order event name. Now the higher order event name will be this entire string here, and we're going to parse that into a series of sub-events. Okay? So then we're going to call setup event binding. We're going to pass in the target, in this case it's window, the event names, which is going to be that collection of sub-events, and then the handler. And the handler in this case is the handler that the calling context is providing for the event. All right, now let's take a look at setup event binding. So it's a little bit complicated here. I'm going to go through as quickly as I can. Essentially, the setup event binding follows the pattern of binding a proxy function outside of the Angular zone, then returning a function that will tear down the event bindings so that Angular knows how to remove the event bindings when a calling context is destroyed. Now, in this case, we can't just simply call the event handler because we have to track a series of chained events over time. So this proxy function is going to do that for us. And it's going to use a timer to make sure that the series of events are consumed within a constrained amount of time. Otherwise, we don't want the browser to just sit there forever trying to consume the event sequence. So essentially, if there's no timer, we look to see if the current event matches the first event in the pending set of events. If it does, then we set up the timer, and then we fall down into our event processing mode. We shift the first event off of the pending events. If it matches the current event, then we prevent the default because we're dealing with key combinations, so we probably want to override the default behavior for a given combination. I don't love this, but I also don't know how to not do that for a lot of the key combinations. And if we run out of pending events, meaning we've consumed all of the events in the sequence, we're going to dip back into the Angular zone and invoke the handler that the user or the developer provided as part of the plugin configuration. Now, if we're not out of events yet, right, we're still working through that chain, there's really nothing else to do because we're just going to let that pending event names continue to be consumed on subsequent events. Now the timer that we set up here, you'll see eventually calls reset, and reset, sorry, it's up here, will clear the timer, reset the pending event names with our collection of event names, right? These are like the command K and then command U, or the command K and then the command L, or all the Konami codes, so on and so forth. Yeah, you can read through this on your own. But basically that's how it works. In order to implement this, I had to re-implement a lot of the logic that's part of the inbuilt keyboard event plugin that Angular has built in. And I just moved all that to this keyboard event helper class so that I can kind of separate the noise of the low-level stuff from the logic of the event orchestration. But you can see here that I'm saying a lot of this was taken directly out of the key events file from the GitHub, from Angular's GitHub, of course, with my own personal style being applied to it. But essentially, it does things like normalizing the key commands and making sure that the key codes are all the same across the browsers and so on and so forth. Mostly, I just wanted to separate this as a file so that now I could use this across different applications as I need to create custom plugins. But essentially, that's where we are. So now I can use the key down event, and I can use the plus here to indicate chained sequences of events, and it just works seamlessly out of the box. And it's super simple to consume from an Angular template syntax standpoint, and that's just part of why Angular is so powerful and so elegant. Like, it just, I don't know, just awesome stuff. So hopefully you found this interesting.